Good afternoon. I'm Elaine, the Ninja Life Coach, and welcome to my channel today. Today we're going to talk about 3 things that can happen after your first year of losing your spouse. And for those of you who have just lost your spouse, or maybe your spouse is terminally ill and you're experiencing a little bit of anticipatory grief, I'm going to do a video for you guys. The video today, however, is after you've had a little bit of time to think about the death of your spouse. And these are just some things that I know happened to me, and I want to share that with you today. Now, I want to say, as always, I am not a mental health professional. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't diagnose, nor do I want to. But if you are experiencing any type of clinical depression, or you're just feeling down and you don't know what's causing it, I'm going to urge you to go see a mental health professional, because they can help you with whatever it is that you've got going on there. Because sometimes, we don't recognize those things in ourselves, and sometimes our families don't recognize that either. They think, oh, it's just the grief, it's just life, it's just whatever. But depression is a very, very real disease. And if you're experiencing that and you're feeling down over a significant period of time, which I would say is 2 to 3 weeks, then you need to talk with someone who can help you. The first thing that I started experiencing about a year after Greg passed away was I started feeling the burden of the grief start to lift. And I started experiencing a little bit of freedom. Now, that sounds really great, but with that freedom came guilt, because I felt guilty because I was actually being a little bit happy. When I would laugh, when I would feel joyful, when I would experience these things, I would feel guilty, like I wasn't honoring Greg properly, or I wasn't remembering Greg, or anything like that. Well, let me clue you in on a little fun fact. You are not going to forget your spouse. That is a part of us that we will have with us forever, those memories that we have of them. There's not a chance in this world that I will forget that I was ever married to Greg Jackson. I won't forget that. But I also determined over the course of time that moving on with your life and being happy about, say, the birth of a grandchild, yes, there may be some regret because your spouse isn't there to experience that with you, but there's also joy in the new life coming into this world. And that was something that I started experiencing about a year mark after Greg had died. I started being able to feel happy again. I started experiencing some freedom from that grief burden that had laid with me like despair, like a blanket, for a solid year, where I cried at the drop of a hat for really no apparent reason. And then after a year, you kind of feel that lift off of you, but beware, because with that can come guilt for feeling that freedom. And don't let that overtake you. That's the enemy's way of trying to hold you back and keeping you from moving into what God has for you, and keeping you from progressing forward on your journey with God. So that's number 1, is the freedom. The second thing is you're going to start to feel, after about a year, I was really numb for about the first year. I didn't feel a whole lot of anything. I felt really dead inside. That's the only way I know how to describe it. I felt like I would never laugh again, that I would never love again, that things would happen, and I knew that I should be happy about that, but I was just kind of meh. It just wasn't a really joyful time. But after that first year, I started feeling I started getting my feelings back, where I was feeling joyful and I was feeling happy. And this goes right along with that freedom thing. But when that numbness goes away, you're going to start experiencing all the feels again, and some new ones that you didn't feel before. This is a very vulnerable time in your life, and I want to just extend a word of caution here. This is a time, ladies especially, when you can attach yourself emotionally to someone that you don't need to attach yourself to, because you're vulnerable, you're starting to feel good, you're starting to feel a little bit more like things look better to you, your outlook is starting to, look better, and maybe you're even starting to date again. And the first person that comes along may or may not be the person you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with. They may not be. They may just be somebody that appeals to that emotion that you're starting to feel. So I'm going to ask you to be very, very cautious when you start dating and you are starting to feel again. Make certain that that is from God. And it's not just something you're experiencing because you're starting to get your emotions back. I know that's something that I went through. I started feeling those emotions again. And I was like, okay, this is almost overwhelming to me because I don't really know what to do with this. And I just kind of sat back and prayed my way through it and prayed my way out of it. And honestly, the prayer really does work. And I'm just going to tell you it does. So don't make attachments that are not worthy of you, because you are worth something. You have value, not only to God, but to others. You're still here for a reason. The third thing that you start to do after about a year, and this one is kind of like an elephant in the room, and people don't like to talk about this, but you may have experienced during the first year some anger at God and anger at your late husband or wife. But what happens after about a year is that all starts to fade and you start to normalize a little bit. But what can also happen in that normalization is you start to romanticize the dead. I've never met a widow who said whose husband was just an absolute jerk and they had, no good times with him. No. What they normally do is their husband may actually have been a jerk, but they romanticize that in their mind, and your mind can play tricks on you with that. Our memories play tricks on them. The bottom line is this: all of us are human. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, and guess what? Your late spouse wasn't perfect either. There are going to be things that they did that if they were still here, they would still aggravate you. I know Greg went out and did something one day back before he passed away. It was about a year before he died. And he went out and did something and he didn't tell me. And he came home and told me after the fact. And I was extremely upset about that. And I'm not saying that you need to hold on to past hurts and past things that happened, but I can assure you that if that happened to Greg and I today and he were still here, I would still be mad about that. So don't let yourself romanticize or kind of excuse bad behavior. You have to look at your spouse through a lens that is realistic and honest, and just say, that really angered me. Don't say, well, he was an absolute saint. He was perfect. No, he wasn't, and neither were you. But you may have been perfect for each other, and that's okay. I just want to caution you against that, romanticizing the late spouse, because that is not healthy. It is not emotionally healthy, and it isn't spiritually healthy. And I'm not even sure that it's physically healthy. So just look at your spouse through a realistic lens. If there were times when they were a jerk, say so. Write it down, make a journal about it, and just say, I'm just feeling really today, I'm thinking about that time that Billy Bob did so-and-so, and that really aggravated me. And it's perfectly okay to feel that way. And it's also perfectly okay to say, I remember that time Billy Bob and I went on a picnic up to the Smoky Mountains, and that was the sweetest day I had ever had in my life. That's perfectly okay too. That's not romanticizing it. That's being honest. I hope this helps. I know sometimes it's really, really difficult to look back and to remember these things and to work our way through these things. And I am not in any way suggesting that what I went through is going to be the same process that you're going through. I'm just sharing this with you because these are some things that happened to me. And if they're happening to you, I want you to know, hey, there's hope. There's light at the end of that tunnel. I can overcome that and I can move forward with my life, and I don't have to cling to my past because God is greater than anything that's ever happened to me. You guys have a wonderful day. God bless. Maranatha.